it's time to get started. So, welcome again. This is quite exciting. We are going to be talking about food, and in particular, we are going to be talking about the work of UNDP in food systems innovation, R&D. And here's the agenda. Basically, we have two speakers today. Well, we have actually three speakers. The first bit after this introduction will be shared by Violet Katillo and Anesu Freddi, both from the Accelerator Lab in Zimbabwe. And they have a really great example on how technology and tradition can combine with a pest control initiative based on drone, AI, and traditional knowledge. So that's like not something you hear every day. And then we got Inwei Chong from the Accelerator Lab in Malaysia. And this is an example of systems transformation in practice. We hear a lot about this idea of systems transformation, which sounds very attractive, but it's not always clear how you start going about it if you're starting from, let's say, scratch. But Inwei knows that, so let's hear from them. Before we do that, a bit of stage setting. So the UNDP Accelerator Labs, to which both the Malaysia and the Zimbabwe one belong, is a network of 90 labs that are embedded in 113 country offices, award-winning. It's quite well known in innovation environments because it is such a large, ambitious, and innovative approach. The labs are basically based on the idea that collective intelligence is the North Star of development. There's a lot to contribute to development. Collective intelligence is what happens when, by people interacting, you get a sort of expanded capacity for processing information and learning. So this is powered by the idea that people closest to the problem are more likely to have a solution. So this is why, instead of creating like a large innovation facility in New York, UNDP created a network of 90 labs all over the world. And a lot of collective intelligence existed as a concept before the digital era, but of course has been greatly enhanced by digitality, by the advent of large masses of data that are interoperable and can be combined in very many ways. In the case of food in particular, what happened is that the network of labs is made by sovereign units. So each lab decides autonomously what they want to work on, and so there is no sort of a directive from the top that say you guys need to work on food systems. Despite that, 33 of the 90 have been independently converging on this food systems idea, and the slide will show you, some of the things that are being worked on and some of the labs that are working on them, but it is enough of a pattern that would invite some further investigation. And so in 2024, based on these patterns, there was some curation of some work to try and bring all of this together into something that we call an R&D agenda. And the R&D agenda is made of several things. The first one is a theory of change. And the theory of change around food systems that seems to emerge from all this work in all these tens of labs all around the world goes something like this. You have increased fairness and resilience as the objective for a project or a program on food systems. So what we want to do is we want for food systems to become more fair and more resilient. And the way to do it is to pursue one or more of three opportunities. One of them is combining new technology, collective intelligence, and traditional knowledge. Another one is creating value from food waste and underused assets. And the third one is improving the position of women and youth in value chains. And then as you pursue these opportunities, when things go well, you will make progress, and this progress will be measured in terms of system diversity. So system diversity becomes the North Star of the work of the UNDP Accelerator Labs on food systems. More diverse systems are more resilient, are more productive, are more efficient, and this is why we should increase those. Everything that increases systems diversity is likely to be a good thing for food systems. Each of these opportunities gets its own explanation in the food systems agenda, which will be shared, if it has not already been shared, sorry, I can't see now, on the chat. And then from this theory of change, the R&D agenda moves on to learning questions. So this is really the core of a content of an R&D agenda, the way we see it. It's questions rather than answers. These are very generative, we find, and they incite progress by telling us which directions are the most promising to look. And all of these questions, they are reconducible to one or the other of the three opportunities plus the system diversity idea. And again, the R&D agenda will have more detailed examples of, not examples, but explanations of all these questions. And here is where we would like to ask you, these are learning challenges, and what are your own learning challenges? How are they close maybe to some of the 10 learning questions that are detailed in the agenda? And so there is a poll that we would like you to take 2 minutes to go through. You can see it now in a pop-up window that should have appeared on your screen right now. So I will now give you maybe a minute or so in order to read through the poll and see what you think. And again, to avoid the awkwardness, some music.
Constanza, can you not see the poll if you make your window bigger? It's not.
I had it open and it just disappeared, but just try again.
Okay. So if Aide also says that it disappeared, let me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's back now.
It's back now. Great.
Okay, the poll seems to be well on its way. No wrong answers, of course, colleagues. This is just a way that we share our own learning challenge and look for allies and people that would like to take them on with us. This is the real purpose of this call, so I'll say this again at the end, but if you would like to collaborate in looking at learning challenges on food systems, please reach out to me at the end of this call. Okay? And with a less than perfect fade out, let me now hand it over to our next speaker, who is, I don't know, is it you, Anesu, or is it you, Violet, who are going to start this presentation?
So I will start. What I'm going to do is I will quickly whiz through the context of the background so that people can understand where it started from, and then Violet will pick it up from there.
Fantastic. So we start with Anesu Freddi from the Accelerator Labs in Zimbabwe. Over to you.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, colleagues. Happy to make this presentation. Like I said, I'll whiz through this quickly so that I can give Violet a little bit more time to talk about some of the insights and the current work that is happening with the project. So sometime about 3 years ago, the Accelerator Lab in Zimbabwe picked up on some signals of change, specifically on the nexus between climate change and swarming pests or swarming species. And you might be wondering, why is a comms guy talking talking about this instead of your usual Accelerator Lab colleagues? So my role in this back then and now has been to document and tell the stories of their experiences on the ground, which is something that we've done very well, and it has helped us to tell the story. So specifically, let me introduce you to the Quelea bird, which is one of the most populous bird in the world. It has billions of animals, billions of birds, according to the last count, which was years ago, which are estimated to be in the wild and spread over 25 different African countries. So traditionally, it used to consume grass seeds, but now due to climate change and human behavior, it has now moved to eating crops like millet and sorghum. Ironically, these are the same crops that we are planting and growing as an adaptation solution to the same climate change that challenge that that has caused this change of behavior in the birds. So those small, the bird is tiny, it's very small, but it can cause massive damage, and in commercial farms it can affect up to 10% of yields for a farmer. And after they're full, after they finish eating, they begin to play around and continue to do damage on the crops. On the slide there, you'll see there's the Quelea bird in the big picture. On the top right corner there, that's a tweet from who then was the Secretary of Agriculture, who was highlighting the extent of the damage of the bird and what it was causing in farmers. And on the picture below there, you see some of the wheat that it begins to waste after it is full, thereby causing lots of damage. So we picked up in the exploration phase, we picked up on 2 tracks, or we categorized the damage or the impact on 2 tracks. We have the first track, which is the commercial farmers who are mostly planting wheat. On the top there, what you see is one of the wheat farms. And if you look at the picture there on the top, you see those tracks of yellow. Someone would think that maybe that's something wrong with either the crop, or it could be overwatering, but in fact, that is the damage caused by the Quelea bird. In all of those tracks that you see in that top picture there, that's the damage that they cause. And like I said, that farmer there is one of the top wheat seed farmers in Zimbabwe, who has been affected year in, year out by the Quelea bird. And the second track was subsistence and smallholder farmers, mostly in rural areas, who are planting small grain crops like your sorghum, your millet, just to eat and survive. So on the commercial farms, to control the bird, what they do is they bring in airplanes to spray in, or people with spraying machines to spray a mist of very poisonous or purple label chemical known as fenthion or fenthion. And as the birds come into roost, they fly into this mist, and then it does the thing on the birds, and they die. But unfortunately, this chemical is very toxic. Like I said, it's a purple label, and anything in its path, it destroys. So anything in the ecosystem, around that ecosystem, is destroyed. Your bees, your butterflies, everything. And also that the chemical is on the verge of being put on a blacklist of being banned. In fact, the only reason that it has not been banned is because we are still to find a suitable alternative for it. And then on the smallholder farmers, what they do to try and control the bird is they try to destroy the breeding grounds. If you see on the second track there, the bird nests in the picture. And then they also try and spread the risk by having multiple households planting the same crop, so that if you are going to lose, let us share in the losing of the crops, at least we'll get something. And then we also have those bird catchers, that big picture on the second track below, who have honed the art of catching these birds. I'll come back to them in a second, but I will move on to the next slide and talk about what the Accelerator Lab in Zimbabwe did after realizing this challenge. So they pitched this case to the SDG Challenge, which the Japanese government sort of funds or sponsors, and they agreed to match us with a Japanese company called Pegara. Pegara specializes in AI and robotics, so they matched us to explore if we can use emerging technologies such as drones and AI to throw at this challenge. So there in the picture there we have we're doing trying to capture footage so that we can do machine learning and understand how they fly and so on and so on. But the most important thing there, that group of people that you see on to your right in the picture are the bird catchers who went out to it in the field. First of all, they were very instrumental in tracking, because they've understood that bird and its behavior and its patterns over generations. It's a trait that has been passed down from their fathers and their fathers' fathers and so on. So they know and understand the bird's patterns, how it moves, the timing, and so on and so on. So every time that we're in the field to try and learn, these guys were very instrumental in helping us track the bird, where they roost, and so on, and to also understand the patterns of the bird. So this was very critical in just trying to understand and capture the footage to where we'll then learn the behaviors of the bird. And then secondly, what we discovered was, in addition to knowing how the bird behaves, they'd also innovated over generations ways to capture this bird by just learning how these birds fly. Initially, they used to use wires, and then from wires they used to make a mesh of wires, and then they discovered that the mesh of wires sometimes, because when they catch the birds, they want them still intact so that they can sell the birds for consumption. But the wires were too, they would cause too much damage on the birds, so they then discovered the nets, and so on and so on. So those are some of the things that the team from Pegara and the team from UNDP were learning from, and then were using to develop the solution. And one of the key things that we learned from the bird catchers was they have a particular way of whistling, which when the birds are flying, when they whistle in a particular way or code of whistling, they can divert the flight path of the birds. They can whistle as if it's a predator bird, or they can whistle as if it's a friendly bird, and the birds then change the way that they fly. So the team learned a lot, and as a result, they developed an AI solution, AI software, which is plugged into drones. And these drones, they recorded the sounds from the bird catchers or their code of whistling, which they put on a speaker, and it's carried on a drone. And what the AI does is it, if you put it, for example, if you deploy it in a farm, in a commercial farm, for instance, when it sees the birds, it also puts out a swarm of drones that sort of drive the birds away. and also play the sound that we learned from the bird catchers. I will pass it on to Violet to talk about one of the key things that we learned from during this exploration phase, because initially when we went, we thought we were just going to learn one thing, but there's so many tracks of things that we learned, including the value chain of the birds, because we thought once the birds are killed, they're destroyed, nothing. But we also then learned that people eat when they catch them, they prepare them, they consume them, and there's a whole value chain that can be built around this. So that's one of the tracks that Violet will also come in and talk about the work that the Arc Lab continue to do. But before I leave, the final thing that I will add on is what Alberto was saying at the beginning, the power of collective intelligence, collective intelligence being the North Star of development. If we did not have the kind of people, the teams that we're working with, the partners that we're working with, all of this work would not have been possible. We had key government ministries from the national colleagues from the national parks, and it made it easier for us to access some of these areas which we would not have been able to access. We had the bird catchers that I was talking about, and so on and so on. So without all of these key counterparts, we would not have the solution that we have now, which has now been put to test and should be deployed. But I'll pass it on to Violet to pick it up and talk about how we then develop the value chain around the Quelea birds. Over.
All right, thank you so much, Anisi. So where we are now is looking at the value chain of the Quelea birds. And I think the most important thing was to find out from the community what are alternative ways the communities are actually capitalizing on the presence of Quelea birds. So we had an innovation challenge where we just made it open to participants to tell us or show us what else can we do with Quelea birds to transform them from pests to opportunities or a source of income or a source of protein. So the first challenge that we had was with the University of Zimbabwe. We can see that they made various dishes using Quelea birds. What you see on the table here are all products that were made from Quelea birds. And then the next area that we were now looking at is how do we scale this innovation? And so next slide. Yes, so we realized that there is that component of the value chain where the community is adding value, but then there's also demand for this, the product that Pegara had developed. We engaged with JICA, the Embassy of Japan, and a community in Bindura who are doing rice farming. Right. Initially, we're looking at traditional grains, the sorghum, the millet, etc. But then we realized that there is potential to actually scale this this technology to actually address challenges also in other areas. And to add on to this America Rice project that we were exploring or looking into, there was also a request from WFP to see how UNDP can closely work with WFP to make use of the drone technology in the control of Quelea birds on their sesame seed project. So that was quite exciting for us because it validated that indeed this technology is something that can be scaled and is something that is needed by the community. But then moving on to the next slide, we realized that, technology and making sure that the end user is able to use the technology is very important. So next slide. sorry, I can't control the slides from my end for some reason. All right. So we realize that it's very important that the technology that we have created should be able to be used by the end user. So one area that we realized was the community had challenges in terms of how does this technology get integrated into the community. So where we are now is we're now looking at, if we're going to scale this technology, how do we make sure that it is relevant to the target audience, which is mostly the community in the marginalized communities of Zimbabwe, and also looking at even like scalability. Is it possible to scale? Is it affordable for the targeted community to be able to use this technology, and also to be able to maintain the technology? And also we realize that indeed there is need for the use of the drone technology in the control of the birds. However, the biggest challenge, I guess, is really more on is this scalable, or is it for the elites? If it's quite expensive, how do we make it affordable for the community to be able to use the technology? And then we also realized, the next slide, please. We also realized that there is also other pathways that we can also look into in terms of the value chain. We had an innovation challenge that we did with the University of Zimbabwe, and we realized that there are other areas where there is value in the quelea bed. For example, processing the quelea beds into high protein for livestock, integration of the quelea beds into traditional dishes for culinary innovation, looking at pegged protein products for human consumption and animal consumption. And then we're also looking at the circular economy, like there is potential for zero waste model to be incorporated in food, feed, and fertilizer production as well, using the quelea beds. And then for the nutrition and research, we're looking at profiling and quantifying the protein and the vitamins and the mineral content in the beds, and also looking at evidence-based advocacy, making use of scientific data to support policy and public messaging around quelea beds as a viable solution for pest control and food security, and for community not to see the quelea beds only as a pest, but also as an opportunity. And then the last point that I can also mention is, as we're talking to the women in the community, we realize that actually the beds have been a source of income to most women in the communities, because the women are able to sell the quelea beds. They cook and they dry the beds and they sell, and the money that they are receiving from selling the beds, the women are buying pieces of land, they're buying property, they're able to send their children to school. They are also forming community serving groups. So this is also another area that when the project started, we were not aware of, but as we talk to the community, we are realizing that, okay, there is a whole value chain that is being associated with the quelea beds. So yeah, I think that's all from my end. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Zimbabwe colleagues. So yeah, with this, let's move on to the next presentation. Inwei Chong from the Accelerator Labs in Malaysia. Over to you, Inwei.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nice to meet all of you. I'm Inwei here, and I'll be sharing with you Malaysia's experiencing in regenerating food and through local knowledge and AI. Hope everyone can see my slides. Okay. All right. So as you know, Malaysia is one of the mega diverse countries in the world, and we retrieve lots of species of flora and fauna. The agriculture and plantation sector contributes about 15% to the GDP and making up of 20% of employment. However, food security is still increasingly threatened, as highlighted during the pandemic, and it's still so with a very low self-sufficiency level for several foods, such as fruits and vegetables and paddy. And a lot of the communities that are working in this sector are still one of the poorest communities in the country. And we're also competing a lot with other cash crops. Land use is often being used for oil palm and rubber, which takes up at least 7 million hectares in the overall use for agriculture. Other cash crops like cocoa, coffee, chilies are also often more dominating because they fetch higher profits. Less and less are actually planting paddy because they could also easily get this from the nearest town. So actually planting them for self-subsistence has also decreased over the years. And with climate change, we have seen the yields for some of this paddy also decreasing between 43 to 61% with just a degree increase in temperature or even 1 millimeter more of rainwater. Extreme weathers like drought and flood is not helping as well. And we have recorded a post-harvest loss up to 311 million in one of the years, which caused a high revenue loss to a lot of these farmers. And not to mention, pesticides and use of chemical fertilizers are also in the increase due to pests and diseases that are increasing because of climate change as well. This doesn't just affect health, it also causes high greenhouse gases in the long run and land degradation to the communities as well. The prices of fertilizers and pesticides is also increasing over the years, which is an extra burden for small-scale farmers for their livelihood in the long run. But over the other side of the world, in the rural side, in Malaysia, especially in the Borneo Island, there is massive amount of land that can be used to plant all these fruits, vegetables, paddies for self-sufficiency level in our country. In fact, there is abundance of it, as you can see in the picture. That whole area is being planted by pineapple, so much so that there is a dedicated festival just for pineapple during the season. And we also have very good varieties of hill paddy due to the topography, very hilly topography of Sabah that are traditionally planting hill paddies of varieties of heirloom seeds with different grain sizes, time of maturity, requiring different amount of water. However, it has very few R&D and also commercialization support given to this community. The fact that these grains are actually very climate resilient with up to 2 years of storage, with increase of temperature, pests and diseases, they are also very resilient to that, and they fetch a really high price in the export market. But sadly, it's not very well promoted in Malaysia due to the very laborious work that you have to put in because of the way it's planted on a hill. And also we noticed that a lot of these producers from the rural areas often do not have market access, and a lot of them ended up as food waste, which they either are left to rot or there's no facilities for storage and refrigeration to keep a longer shelf life for the community. And our journey actually started during the pandemic back in 2020, where we were talking to several groups of community who in the focus group discussion mentioned to us women, especially Jovita, the one that you are seeing in the scene, face enormous challenge in business continuity, even though they have massive plots of land behind their backyard and they have lots of producers, they couldn't sell it to the local markets because of movement control order. And even though they were very self-subsistence in the past, they were also having their savings depleted and they don't have enough money to exchange for essential items such as oil and salt due to the prolonged movement control order. And though e-commerce market is quite advanced in Malaysia, aspiring women entrepreneurs like Jovita wasn't able to penetrate that market because of infrastructural barriers like poor road access, costly delivery services, limited warehousing storage, as well as the lack of internet connectivity. And what is even more telling is that most of the women actually have mobile devices, but they were not being built in terms of capacity to use it for e-commerces. And even though they work in family farms, they don't own the lands or businesses, and they face a higher barrier when it comes to accessing financing as well. So this is where e-commerce was seen as an unviable option for them. And for industrial players, they really want to dabble into the rural area because it's a risky investment. And to exacerbate this further, road conditions in the rural areas are often very poor. And most of the communities rely on very traditional methods of sun drying, which is not hygienic, and sometimes it's also exposed to pests. There's also a general lack of incentive for young people or farmers to continue farming produces because it's very manual, and there's a lack of downstream value chain that is built for them to stay on. So a lot of them migrate to the urban areas for more corporate related jobs. And also the internet connectivity and the electricity in those areas are also sporadic. They rely a lot on gensets to power up their normal day-to-day usage for power, which is not ideal if you want to do a business where you need consistent energy. And for e-commerce, it's also not consistent if you want to liaise with B2B or even B2C types of transactions. And a lot of renewable energy has been set up in the past. However, maintenance is an issue. A lot of them do not have the downstream income to actually sustain and maintain those renewable energy effectively in the long run. So with that, we actually work with UNCDF at first to map out the alternative value chain that is available by looking at social enterprises that are currently working in those areas, who are already going in and out to the rural urban areas to bring capacity building to the community. And in the process, was able to help transport out some of the producers for sale in the rural areas, and as well as, for example, soy and oil, and from the rural areas to urban sites to sell their vegetables and also fruits. However, in the long term, they would still need to keep them with a longer shelf life. This is where we try to map out where are the nearest collection centers, warehouses, refrigerations, or even methods of drying that potentially could support these women. We work with the private sectors as well to see where are some resources that they can provide in e-commerce for communities to utilize it at a very low bandwidth situation in their community. So with that, we actually started with a very bare bone website called Kundos. We use Google website because it's easy to maintain. It doesn't require a lot of bandwidth, but it definitely helps market communities' products out there and make it visible, starting with the peninsula of Malaysia and slowly more to the export market. It has drawn a lot of attention from the government side as well, which has adopted them in several national programs in marketing it after the pandemic. And this is also one way to teach them about marketing digital adoption and also social media marketing. So we also use a lot of WhatsApp Business because that's also one of the easiest way or very familiar way that the communities have in selling their businesses, which is mostly word of mouth, but in the pandemic, it has kind of evolved into that whole WhatsApp community as well. So as it kind of grew, the business and the interest among the community, especially among the women, we also realized that electricity consumption, packaging, and whatnot is also increasing. A lot of the women package and dry these producers with the oven in their homes, which in the long run is quite a high cost of production for them, and it's not sustainable for the environment as well. So this is where, when the Japan Innovation Challenge came about, we came out with a proposal of a solar dryer that the community can use together and to dry them during different seasons and for different products that they might have in their backyard. So with EBF and AGC, we actually designed a solar dryer that works for the rural community in a tropical weather. The one that we actually saw out there is mostly for more colder climates, which in the past, when they have purchased this with an academic institution, there was issue of fungus growth, and it's a very long drying time. There's a lot of tinkering that's needed to localize it to this climate in Malaysia. However, we don't really have open blueprint to replicate or experiment it in the local communities. So with that, we actually make use of that fund to work closely with a local social enterprise who specializes in renewable energy. And we're very proud that the ones who are involved are also mostly women engineers as well, who has worked with the users that are also mostly women to design one prototype that would actually fit their day-to-day usages. And as you can see, there is also designed in such a way where it's easily packed like an IKEA furniture, because one of the problem or issues that they face is transporting such a big machinery into remote areas due to very poor road conditions. So we have tinkered it in such a way where they are able to disassemble and assemble it easily, and anyone without needing a big vehicle can actually transport it in. And we have built an open blueprint so that other community-based organizations can also replicate and use it for their benefits as well. And other than just training them on maintaining the solar dryer assembly and maintenance, we also gave training on social media marketing, food processing, what are the standards for export market and to be put in shelves of supermarket, for example. And it has generated a lot of interest from the women who are empowered to then use the additional income for their own family and communities, and also potentially grow their businesses, for example, in agritourism, and improve their own standards of living. In the second phase of the Japan innovation, we actually improved it with a dome-shaped design, where you could actually dry more produces that has also higher volume of moisture. We also further reduced the weight to make it much lighter with aluminium. And the cost of doing all this is merely USD 1,000, which is a lot less by 3,000 from what you would buy outside. And what's great is that there's also a smart system introduced where it will monitor the temperature to ensure producers are not burned. And during rainy days, you could actually plug into a source to actually continue using it. And the best thing is that we have managed to reduce the drying time from 24 hours to 8 hours, so they could dry more and sell more producers over the long run. And about 200 women and agripreneurs were trained from that two phases and expanded to 6 locations. And the income that they generated varies between USD 20 to 100 per month, depending on the seasons and also the amount that they were selling. And because of this story, the Ministry of Finance picked it up from one of our proposals for Budget 2023, and has scaled to Green Resilient Recovery Facility across the nation, right? And this was a USD 1.76 million grant facility that utilizes renewable energy to support green products development and upskilling rural enterprises. What you see here, some of them will using solar energy as a distillation center to come out with essential oils, and also producing organic fertilizers, soaps, menstrual products, and snacks. So lots of innovative products from about 912 women that were benefited in this initiative. 16 rural enterprises as a whole was then onboarded to public entrepreneurship programs, and with 11 private sector partnership being brought into this project as well. So at the start of this proposal, we actually made sure that one of the category is to ensure private sectors are involved so that they continue to sustain some of this R&D purposes in those areas, kind of learning from the Japan Innovation Challenge, which I think worked really well for the communities. And another project is with the Ministry of Economy that we took on learning from that program as well on the solar dryer, which is to enhance hill paddy industry in Sabah. The aim is to increase productivity for the hill paddy from merely 1 season to 2 seasons per year, and more yield at a smaller plot of land. This industry itself, it's already quite sustainable, where they practice multi-cropping, they do rotational farming every 2 years, but a lot of the interests have been dropping because it's very manual. Young people are not interested, even though they follow their parents to do it when they were younger. So with that, we thought it's great to document all this traditional knowledge as part of the project to ensure that their knowledge in terms of a natural way of preventing soil erosion, pest control. There are certain plants that you plant where pests don't actually come, and to improve the fertility of those producers by planting different types of fruits and vegetables that are complementary to it. All this will be lost if we don't document it. So we decided to, as part of this program, to build a capacity in terms of traditional knowledge, bringing in the young people to make it attractive to them again, as well as incorporate technologies such as AI, IoT, and precision farming into this program so that it's not as laborious. So with this, we are hoping that it not just improve food security in the long run, but it also improve their livelihood. As I mentioned, Hill Paddy has really great qualities when it comes to climate change. They're very climate resilient. So in terms of fulfilling self-sufficiency level at a local and national level, it's beneficial as well. So we hope to then extend this further, and ensuring downstream activities will also be introduced to make sure that, for example, packaging, marketing of those Hill Paddy rices can fetch the right amount for the communities, and also potentially agro-tourism, using ecotourism methods to bring extra revenues to the community. So that's all for me today on this presentation. If you want to know more, you can go to some of these blogs and videos. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Ying-Wei. Fantastic presentation again. So thanks for that. So from now, the floor is open for everybody. So please do ask your questions, or grab the mic, or raise your hand, however you want to do it. Type it in the chat. I have a couple of questions of my own that maybe can act as an icebreaker. So what I like about these two stories most is that it's like you are pulling a thread in food systems, and given the system's nature of the matter, you sort of cascade over into many different dimensions in which your action ends up having effect. So in the case of the Kilia bird story, it starts like a pest control story. Here, this bird is eating our small grains, and we would like a better solution than this very toxic pesticide that we are using. And then it ends up being this very fascinating blend of drones, AI, traditional knowledge, turning a pest into a source of food, which then downstream generates a sort of value chain, is a word that Violet used. And in your case, Ying-Wei is just as rich. So it all starts with, this is a rural community. And during the lockdown phase, they can't access their local market anymore. And before you know it, you're in a world where you have open source knowledge, renewable energy, e-commerce, climate resilient and heirloom crops, the entire work. So I'm really fascinated by all this. There are several threads that I could follow through both your examples, but I want to start with one, which is mechanization. So both your stories are stories of going about introducing technology in farming, and this technology is appropriate to small scale farming as well. This is very explicit in the Malaysian story, where you told us how the solar dryers are made so that they can function for relatively small production units. You told us how the e-commerce also is simple and low maintenance. It's not super sophisticated, but it does help the local farmers to reach out. And in the case of Zimbabwe, this is less clear, but I think I saw it. And if not, I'm asking the question to Violet and to Anesu. Do you see technology as an enabler of small-scale farming, or is technology going to stay like it was since the Green Revolution, mostly as a tool for large capital-intensive farms? How is your work improving on this matter? Are we making progress?
All right, thank you, Alberto. So from our end, what we have realized is the drone technology, the way it's working right now is quite expensive and it's high maintenance. And even for us to be moving around with it, I think one option that we were considering was how do we deploy this technology on the ground so that it can cover a lot of villages or communities. And then there was a suggestion of getting a 4x4 vehicle, but then that one becomes a bit of a challenge, right? First, the vehicle needs to be maintained. There's not somebody who needs to put fuel in the vehicle. We need to make sure that we have got the drivers, and then also the community that we are also targeting. Do they know how to maintain this technology? Do they know how to appropriately use the technology? So where we are now, we are at a point where we are moving from the research side to now scaling this innovation under JSB project. And under JSB, we are now looking at what are sustainable ways the technology can benefit the community. Can we use maybe localized motorcycles instead of using a 4x4 vehicle? Can this technology be embedded in small motorcycles that can be easily used by the community? How do we train maybe the local community, starting maybe with one specific area, and we train or capacitate the youth in that community? And then they become the advocates or the people who get to use this technology in the community. And then with the Ministry of Agriculture, we're also looking at, okay, we are using the drones to scare the birds away, but how can we also embed the traditional way, the nets, to maybe catch the birds as well? Like, is there a way we can connect the nets with the drones in such a way that the nets can cover or cast a wider area? So I think the next phase of this project is really looking at how does the technology work for the people, and how can the people make the best use of the technology?
And
Lovely.
if I can just then also build on to what Rimbo said, one of the key things that we also explored was the level at which the technology is deployed. The one idea is to have the smallholder farmers themselves, like as Rimbo was saying, trying to see, do we do motorbikes and so on.
I
can't
think I
hear you,
lost
maybe.
you, Fred.
Yeah.
Anesu. You're not muted, but I cannot hear you anymore.
Yes, it looks like we've lost him.
All right, while he reconnects, maybe you can move on to Inway.
All right. What was your question?
Yeah, I was asking about the mechanization aspect. So a classic challenge of agricultural technology is that the producers of technology do not serve smallholder farmers because they're not rich enough to pay for the tech. And the tech is scale intensive anyway. And so it looks like in both your examples, there is an aspiration, at least in your case, more than that, to technology that, like Violet just said, works for the people and works at a smaller scale. And so I would like to hear more of your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think one of the important things that we learned from these two experiments is to really work with the communities in terms of what is the need for the technology rather than introducing technology. Because the government in itself have done a lot of digitalization programs. Malaysia is quite advanced in that sense. But what we realize when we go into the rural side is often it's not adopted or it gets dropped out after a period of time. So this is where we were very intentional in understanding what was their issue and also what was their angle and how that technology can support them. The other one is the maintenance of the technology itself is often not accessible or affordable to them. So how do we create more opportunities that would help sustain it beyond the projects that we are introducing to them? So with the Japan Innovation Challenge, I thought that was quite a good model where we include the private sector from the start for R&D and subsequently build the capacity of the community as well.
Yeah, it's a very modern approach with this open source idea, replicability and low maintenance, low tech. That's I find it very generative. Okay, do we have any last words, or shall I share the results of the poll? Nadine, are you preparing to speak?
Oh, I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you to. Do you want to see the poll results?
Please do. Let's see what people think.
We had 77% participate. That's 17 people in the call. Are you able to see the results? They should appear now.
I can see them. Interestingly, there's a lot of interest about this idea of using modern technology, collective intelligence, and traditional knowledge at the same time. So it looks like there is a bit of an idea that we have now new technological possibilities thanks to the digital revolution and other factors. Ying-Wei reminded us of the open source culture and world and legal instruments, so we can maybe advance along this path of making agricultural technology more accessible to smallholder farmers who are producing a lot of the world's food with not a lot of technological support. The second most hottest point of interest is adapting food supply systems to environmental disruption, which is also kind of a no-brainer, but with a distant second to the tech and collective intelligence and traditional knowledge. We are at time, so I guess we can stop here if everybody agrees. I'm reachable at, let me put my email address in the chat. If anybody has more curiosities or wants a chat, I will be available and more than glad to connect on this thing. Thank you so much, Anesu. Thank you, Violet. Thank you, Ying-Wei. These are super inspiring presentations. I've heard your work before, but every time I hear you made yet another step forward, and it's really a joy to behold. So thanks very much.
Next week.
Excuse me?
Next week, there's a next session next week.
Indeed, sorry for not
posted the link.
Front loading.
Designing financial inclusion from the ground up. It's going to be super interesting. Moderated by our colleague Tayo. And I put the pre-registration link in the chat so you can click on it and register. We're really looking forward to seeing you. And there will be then a third session also on the 11th of June on circular economy. So this is wonderful to have you. And Alberto, final word for you.
Just that we keep learning. You know, every time I hear these stories from the field, I learn more. Let's continue to do that, and let's continue to do that by comparing notes. So this is, I think, where the real magic happens. So after the sharing of these fantastic stories, maybe I would encourage everybody here to share their own in one way or another. Maybe you're blogging, maybe you're making videos. Like, please share the links. Let's get all of them together and kind of keep corresponding and acting as a collective brain as we try to advance this food systems conundrum. And with that, I would say thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.